Hi guys, and welcome to today's live. So I am waiting on my guest today, Ailsa Page, but it doesn't seem like she can join us. We were going to be chatting about therapy horses and how we can use rehabilitation to support them. And this was quite an exciting topic for me because brought on by a research refresh that we recently did. On therapy horses and how rehabilitation and therapeutic exercises can influence their stride length. So I want to just say thank you to all of you who have made the time to join me live today. As Ailsa can't join me, we're obviously not going to be having this live right now, but I wanted to just check in with you guys and let you know what was happening, so that you know that we haven't just dropped you. Things happen, plans change. Unfortunately, life is as it is, and we can't always, sometimes things happen last minute that we can't always account for. But maybe it's good because I've been struggling with my internet connection and I've had to really hunt for a location to do this live today. And even so, my connection is unstable. So I hope that you guys can hear and see me clearly. If not, that's okay. So we will try and reschedule this chat. But just so that you know, if you haven't watched that research refresh yet, if you don't know what a research refresh is, a research refresh is a little summary video that we create for our online pet health members where we summarize a research article that's relevant to rehabilitation. I just kind of take out the key points and thoughts from it. We briefly discuss the article itself, and then we take out the results that are relevant to us and briefly discuss how that might help us in clinical practice. So this specific research article we went into was recently published, and it focused on I see Ailsa is in the background here, so I'm going to ask her to join me. Just give me a second. Hi, Ailsa. How are you?
Hi there. I'm not sure whether this is going to work because I'm outside. If it doesn't, I'll go in.
Okay. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. My timing was a little bit wrong because it said on my clock that I should be another hour. So
That happens. Time zones can be quite tricky. So I'm already live. I went live so that we wouldn't miss the slot and just to let everyone know.
Yeah.
Hi,
Hi, everybody.
So we are going to be chatting a little bit about therapy horses. So Ailsa, why don't you introduce yourselves to our listeners, and let us know who you are and what your interest is in this topic.
So for 12 years before I moved to Sweden, these guys behind me worked as therapy horses. So that's why I thought I'd be outside. I thought you could meet some of them. This is Teddy. He's a trick pony. So he didn't do riding, but he did a lot of trick training with children that we had for our therapeutic school. And then Aisha did do some therapeutic riding with us. So that's my therapy horses.
It's really awesome to meet them. Thank you for introducing us. They are very lovely.
Yeah, they're very cute. For 12 years I worked with horses and people. A number of my horses were, I say mine, they belong to the centre, but a number of the horses were horses that themselves had come in with rehab needs. So that was quite interesting. Some of them because they had behavioural concerns, and so we took them over to being suitable for rehab. And if they could do the work that we needed them to do, either with equine assisted therapy, oh my goodness, it's just gone crazy cold here. It was lovely before. Or with hippotherapy. And certainly Aisha here, my black mare, has done some hippotherapy work. Then we would take them over to doing that, and then eventually hopefully find them a new place to be. She was the exception. I fell in love with her when I saw her born, so she wasn't a rehab horse herself, she was just my baby.
Okay, so that's a really interesting progression then, for the horses themselves.
That was
what are the different kinds of therapy that horses could do? Can you take us a little bit through the different
absolutely. I think there's essentially I think probably about three major areas that you find horses working. So one is in therapy with people who are disabled, and they go for riding for the disabled, and that's quite common. People tend to know what that is. Another is in working with horses where they it's therapeutic riding, so it's different from riding for the disabled. Then it's riding with a purpose, and that can also be it sort of goes along with riding for the disabled. It's usually prescribed, so often by either a psychiatrist or by somebody who's working within physical care like me, so perhaps a physiotherapist or a speech and language therapist. So it's prescribed, and it has, like most therapy, a beginning, a middle, and an end. The same with when you have alongside that.
Hold on, I can't actually hear you.
Okay, I'm going to take you up the top. I'll just be a second.
Okay. All right. So to those of you who have joined us live, thank you. It's really awesome to have you. We're chatting about therapy horses, the different kinds of therapy, and more importantly, how that kind of links back to us as rehabilitation therapists. So how can we support these guys to be able to do their jobs really well? Because I feel often we kind of forget we downplay their physical needs, their rehabilitative needs, because they're not doing as physically demanding work. So it's really interesting to chat about this. And the research article that we looked at a few weeks ago highlighted that it's really important for a therapy horse to actually be physically able. So here we go. Welcome back.
Sorry, I've just run up the hill back into my my clinic. Yeah, so I think the third kind of area, so we've assisted therapy. So that's therapy where you might be standing with a horse, you might be doing things with the horse, but it's all about psychological therapeutic work or learning something about yourself. And then the last type of therapy really is, gosh, I'm puffed, I'm not fit. It's quite a steep hill. The last type of therapy is hippotherapy. And that's the one that was in that study. And it's really interesting because
Is anyone else struggling to hear Ailsa at the moment? It seems like the internet connection is not
like the ridden therapies. It's there we go. The slight difference between hippotherapy and riding for the disabled or ridden therapeutic work is that you have a physiotherapist who's with the person. It's you're looking for a feedback loop between the person's body and the horse, and then the horse responds and the person gets that feedback. So an example would be a child with cerebral palsy who might sit on the horse. They maybe have some spasm or some areas of their body that we're wanting to work on as a physiotherapist to loosen or to strengthen. But because they're used perhaps to sitting in a wheelchair, they don't have that natural feedback. And the nearest I can liken it to is when we put a dog on a balance ball. Now, I'm not suggesting that children are like dogs or that horses are like balance balls, but it's the nearest that I can think of. We're looking for a movement that we can control. And actually with a horse, a well-trained horse, we can control the movement enormously. And then we're looking for this feedback loop. So we want the person to do something and then feel the effects of that. Now, of course, at the same time, the horse is feeling the effects of the person. And that's where the problem lies, I think. And we often think that this stuff is new, but actually it's been going on since Hippocrates. So he recommended that people should ride and be on horses for their health, and that it was a really good form of physical therapy. So this has been going on a really long time, but thinking about the horse in that, I think, has been quite new. Psychologically, there are demands on the horse. It's not normal to go very slowly, sometimes to do very large movements and respond to a body that's kind of wiggly above you at the same time as you're being held back, perhaps by a leader. So usually there is somebody who stands and holds the horse's head. There can be somebody either side of the person who supports their body. You can do back riding, where you also have the therapist So I could be sitting on the horse with the child in front of me. So now we have 3 bodies in motion. And then ask for the horse to move, and to then use that movement, for example, to manipulate hips, or encourage a flexibility, or encourage the early stages of balance. So you're asking a lot of the horse all the time. Children who are on the back of the horses may be reaching, so you might do reaching across the body in order you'll have set aims for them, but from the horse's perspective, suddenly there's a movement that they wouldn't normally feel from a rider. Plus, they may have other people around them. One of the things that I thought, so physically there's a large number of interactions, but psychologically there is as well. So the horse has to understand that this is a different job from the job of just being a riding horse. For me, one of the things that we did with my guys was that they had a different head collar completely when they came into the ring for that job, so that there was no confusion. Now is the time when we're doing this job. And I made sure it was as different as I could possibly make it, because I think it's really important for the horse to know when they're okay to do what they would normally do, when they have to hold themselves very tense. And I found that when they were working even in hand with people with psychological problems, they were often really tense afterwards. So just like us, I have a friend who always says about humans, the issues are in the tissues, and I really like it, because I think that that happens with horses too. They hold issues in their fascia, and not just the obvious ones that are about the 2 bodies interacting with each other, or even 3, but also dealing with trying to work out what this predator species is doing that's now not behaving like a predator species. So there are lots of questions, I think, for the horses psychologically as well, when they work in this field. Yeah.
Yo, that's so interesting. I mean, we also often, we're often talking about the effect of the rider on the horse in terms of, whatever asymmetries or physical changes or abnormalities might be in the rider become reflected in the horse. So I'm assuming that we would have a similar scenario here. And then we're looking at, we're generally looking at quite significant abnormalities or changes in the rider when they're using horses for therapy. And I love what you just said with the issues in the tissues, because fascia also holds emotion, right? And if there are emotional components, and you're saying that the horses become quite tense, how much of that like kind of emotional baggage or transfer or weight is carried over from the rider to the horse in those therapy sessions?
And I think with hippotherapy, you often get joy, actually. You'll get some nervousness, some tension, some fear, but there's a lot of joy around. Whereas working in therapeutic riding or working in equine assisted psychotherapy, often there are a lot of other emotions that are not joy. And with the psychotherapy, there's often a lot of turning, sharp turns. So taking your horse in and out of obstacles, or moving the horse in a way that the horse isn't used to. So again, there's an effect on the horse that I think is ill considered. A lot of older arthritic horses go into therapeutic settings because it's going to be lighter on the body, they're only going to be in hand, they're not going to have to do, and actually it's lighter because you don't have somebody sitting on you. But in terms of what you do in terms of twisting and turning and backing up and using your body, it can go both ways. You can maintain movement, but you can also, I think, without having a proper understanding of the movement, you can also cause pain and cause reactions. And very definitely then there were horses when we worked with psychotherapy who needed massage afterwards, and then needed to go out in the biggest field possible and just kick loose with their friends. And then the herd gets rid of a lot of the emotions. Whereas often they are horses that are doing horses that work in hippotherapy and in psychological therapy, they can be horses that are also riding school horses. So they go from one job to the next. And then I think it's quite hard for them not to hold the tension from like one client and one client group to the next. Yeah.
This is so interesting. Guys, if you're joining us live, it's really great to have you. Please join the conversation, share any thoughts or comments that you have. We'd love to chat with you. I have to say, this is like a completely new thing for me to think about. I haven't had any experience with therapy horses in my work. So I'm loving these thoughts. And like, if you're saying now for the horses that are not ridden, but that are used in psychotherapy, they're performing backup turns, etc. And again, you would think that, so you said that horses that are potentially not sound are going into that work because it's work that they can do, but there's a component of, well, there might be resistance because this horse isn't comfortable backing up or turning right or whatever it may be. So there will be a physical resistance in the horse, which is going to feed back and impact the therapy that they're able to provide, right? So in terms of the quality of therapy that the human is receiving, that is going to be very dependent on the physical ability of the horse in every single one of these fields of therapy, right?
Yeah. It's really interesting as well to work with. I had a number of horses that worked in psychological work, and we maintained them by doing a lot of physiotherapy and a lot of carefully selecting which horse would go in. I'd got a pool of more than 30 horses to choose from, which makes life a lot easier. A lot of people have got like 2 or 5. And within that, we had, for example, we had Strawberry. I will tell you about Strawberry because she was wonderful. She came, she was an ex-trotter racer, really big, the most enormous face I have ever seen. And she came with real horrible damage to her hock. And we weren't sure whether she was going to live or not, but she showed that she wanted to. So we went ahead and did some nerve blocking, and our vet was amazing and really helped us to just maintain Strawberry comfortable. Strawberry's work was with, I'm probably going to go all soppy because she was so sweet. Her work was with children who had autism, and she worked particularly well. She was the biggest horse we had, but she worked really well with kids that were scared of animals. That was her job. So we chose, well, we didn't choose, she chose to work in this field, but she was like, in one way, the least obvious. I don't have a horse now that's as big as Strawberry was, but she was so gentle. She came from a rescue in France and with lots of problems, but you could definitely see that she had had foals, and she just treated little humans like still here. Yeah. So she just treated little humans like vulnerable foals. And we had one little boy who learned to touch her and take control of her. And he used to take Strawberry when he wanted to go and meet another animal he found scary. Like, for example, he found the goats really scary. He would take this huge horse with him to go and meet the goats. And then he would feel safe because he'd got his big friend back there looking after him. What was really interesting to me was how Strawberry could make use of her understanding of dealing with horses to
Really struggling with the internet connection. I'm glad it's not only mine.
of dealing with this little person. And the work we allowed her to do was just being with him. So really sorry, I don't know what's happening there. He thought she was really special, so he did a lot of drawings for her. So all around her stable were his pictures. And he developed a relationship with her. That was about the right level for her. What she could not do was work with students that needed to run or move more, or needed to be working with a horse where there was much more feedback, because her feedback was very gentle and soft, but she also wasn't physically fit to do some of the much more twisty turny, trying to go lead your horse through an obstacle course without touching the horse and things like that, where they can actually get a little bit excited and move faster. So it was just interesting seeing, but that kept her going. And probably for about 5 years, she was really fit just by being this groom and take for a walk type of horse. So there are jobs that horses can do after retirement, but you have to be discerning, I think. And I'm not sure that everybody is aware that we as rehabbers are available to help and keep horses like that going. I think it's really important.
I think that's very important, and I think you've really nailed it there. In that there isn't that, it's not a field that we've moved into and said, hey guys, we can help here, we can do something here. And I wonder if a part of that is not financial, because like school ponies, therapy horses, is there a lot of finances to actually support these guys, or is it going to be something that we just do out of love to help?
When I worked, it was well, one of the things I did straight after when I retired. I didn't really retire, but when I left that work was to do a 600-kilometer ride in order to raise money for it. So that probably says what it was like. It's mostly charitable funding. We worked with a lot of big organisations, and that helped. And we worked with the health service in Britain, and that helped. But yeah, that probably is partly lack of knowledge, lack of understanding that actually the horses do have extra needs from what they do. I think with hippotherapy horses, it's more obvious because you're riding on them and you're doing odd things with them. With hippotherapy, though, the focus is always on the human being. So there's a physio there, but their whole focus is on the human. There are helpers there, but their whole focus is on the human. Even the person who's leading the horse, their focus is on how fast or slow I go for this human, for their therapy. And it is possible, even with the best will in the world, to forget the horse in the middle of it. And yet, for me, the horses were always my colleagues, because it's vital that they have at least as much care as the humans in the therapeutic group. Otherwise, they just can't do the job for us.
Yeah, no, for sure. And to me, that was kind of the thing that really stood out in that research article that prompted me to go into this topic, is that, if the horse doesn't have a full and active stride, for example, and they don't have good range of motion through their spines, they cannot do the job properly, in terms of they're not giving the correct feedback to the rider. And so the quality of therapy the rider's experiencing is reduced. And I just found that, like, that was obvious. It's so obvious,
Yeah.
but we forget about the horse in the middle, like you've just said. And
Yeah.
it could be as simple as, right, like these they use dynamic mobilization exercises,
Yeah.
and a few simple gymnastic exercises, so simple, just incorporated that into the horses' routines, and it made a difference. It made a significant difference. So
what I found as well
potentially
with that was
just
that you could actually include those with some of the people that had done hippotherapy. So I had two ladies that had been riders, had fallen off. One had a low back break, and so was trying to get into riding again. And we used Callum, my regular hippotherapy horse, who was high dressage trained. And so we used him with her. What was interesting was that we could add in, as she became more confident, we could add in those exercises to her routine for both horse and rider. And that was really nice, that she could see that she was helping her horse. And we'd say, oh, he's had some difficult clients this week. He's had to deal with some people that are really squint or really heavy. Is it okay? Can you just do this at the end? And she loved it, of course, because if you've fallen off a horse, you're a horse person. You want the best for a horse. So it was huge motivation for her to actually keep going a little bit longer, even when she was tired, in order to help her horse. So I think these kind of things can come into some, obviously not all, but some hippotherapy sessions, that you actually can bring doing the work with the horse as part of it, because it gives such a psychological lift to the human as well.
I really love that. And that comes kind of back to the education scenario where, if the providers of the hippotherapy, right, the therapists, if they are aware of the needs and the ways that they can help and support their horses, then they can do that. They can incorporate certain things into therapy sessions or into the normal routine in very simple and not, time-consuming ways to help support those horses. I really like that. I think there's so much scope for us, for our profession, to get involved here. I love that story of the rider. That's so special. That's so special. So how would you recommend, if we were to want to expand into that field? So now, for example, myself, I want to get involved with some therapy horses, in different scenarios. How would you suggest I do that?
Well, there are two ways. One is the paid for way, which is probably where we want to be. And the other is the sort of get into it and then look for the paid for way. Most therapeutic centres are desperate for people that will help, who are horsey and have knowledge. Some are, so for example, when I worked in Cheshire, there was a specialist centre for ridden therapeutic work, and they had money and they were able to employ physios to help them. So it's worth looking in your area at what's available. And then you also need to decide, am I interested in helping? I have a bit of a love for really old horses. I had one that lived to 53 and was super fit until 2 days before she died, and then she started to go off her food a bit. So I have a real love for older animals and a real interest in how we keep horses going and how we keep them going mentally as well as physically when they can no longer be riding horses. So for me, going to centres where they use horses for psychological work is my logical place. If you're really into performance horses, I have a bit of that as well, but I know that one of my biggest heart is probably with the oldies. If you're really into working with performance horses, then find somewhere where they're doing hippotherapy, because those horses are performance horses. They're doing a very different job from a dressage horse or a hop jumping horse, but they're nevertheless, the gymnastic performance that they have to provide can be at least as high, if not higher, than pretty high levels of dressage. I was expecting my horse at times to do passage with somebody on his back who couldn't tell him to do passage, so couldn't help him with it because I wanted a little bit more movement just for a stride or two. So these horses are performance horses. So if that's your thing, then I would suggest looking around firstly for your usually they're linked to riding for the disabled places, not always, but Google hippotherapy and Google riding for the disabled, and then see if you can go and visit. And that would be my kind of suggestion for the way in, for those of you that kind of want to keep up that performance side of things, because it certainly is fascinating, I think.
I agree. As you were talking now, I also had the thought, we do want to get paid, but they also need money. Like you said, a lot of it is run on donations and charity. Maybe there's a way for us to get involved in terms of raising awareness, raising funds, and at the same time treating those horses. So there might be some social media campaigns that we could run to help achieve that goal. That would have the added benefits of, you would be marketing yourself, you would be increasing your presence on social media at the same time. So there are some business advantages to doing it that way, or to running a project like that. Let me say it like that, which is not obviously the goal of doing something like this, but we also do need to make money, and so okay, I really like that.
The other thing that I used my hippotherapy horses for was to teach massage and to teach. So if I wanted to own a massage course, but it wasn't convenient to have lots of horses in a place, I could use the hippotherapy horses and the riding for the disabled horses, who would just love a day of massage. Thank you very much. That was perfect. But it was a good opportunity to be there and then also to give some examples of exercises afterwards. So it worked both ways. I got a free set of very well trained, very charming horses to work with. And my owners could come in and have an experience of working with them and then take that back to their own horses afterwards. But then that was a paid for course. So that worked quite nicely too.
I really love that. And you can have, a component of those funds can go back into the center.
Yeah.
So you're not losing money, they're making some money, and you're supporting your wider audience or more customers. I really love that idea. Everyone benefits in a scenario like
Yeah.
that. I really like
Yeah.
that.
They are
And
a lovely group of, it's a joyous thing to work in. I mean, I did it for 12 years. I could have kept going, except I got a bit sick, which was nothing to do with it. That was just totally separate. But it was joyous working in both hippotherapy and in psychological therapies with horses. The horses offer something that you know that we who love horses, we know that horses make us feel better. But to see how that works in practice with people that really, really needed it was extraordinary. And we had one little lovely success story, a little girl who came in with cerebral palsy, really not that able to walk. She was on a sort of relator. Um, and she wanted to do what the other girls in riding schools do. So she wanted to do everything from groom her horse to ride her horse. And so the hippotherapy session sort of grew into a horse care session. And she went forward, and as far as I know, she's still on the youth team of the Paralympics.
wow, that's incredible. I've got
It was cool.
goosebumps.
Yeah.
Oh.
And my little pony was part of that, and that's a lovely feeling too. But yeah,
Oh, goodness.
so
No, you've convinced me that this is something I need to get involved in. I'm completely missing out here. Completely missing out on a part of my life that should be central.
yeah.
Okay, guys, are there any questions from our audience? We would love to hear from you. If you're watching this as a recording, it's great to have you. Share your questions, share your comments, your thoughts, your experiences. We really want to connect with you guys. If this is something you want to get involved in or have questions about, share them with us. If you're already involved in therapy courses, let us know how and what your experience is with that, how you experience it, what it means to you, be a part of that. We'd love to know. And then I think that's all the things that I was really wanting to chat about and ask about, but from my limited knowledge. So is there anything else that we should cover in this, that we should chat about as well, that I haven't thought of?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, I did get asked a lot when I was working with my own therapy horses. I got asked a lot about supplements that would help, and people sort of hope that if they can bolster up the horse, that would do, without then having to also buy in somebody to help. But I think if you can find ways to help that perhaps don't cost as much, or find centres where, I mean, some of the centres that are linked to hospitals, they certainly are well funded. These horses really deserve it. They really do. They work so hard, and they keep giving. I was amazed. Sometimes I'd look at my horse and I think, I'm dead on my feet. You must be dead on your feet. Let's just take a massive long break. But it only took somebody to walk onto the yard, and he was like, "Is this for me?" So they really have this. I think there is an understanding. I don't know how, that somehow what they're doing is important.
They really are, beyond our understanding.
Yeah.
All of these things that we see and observe that we just, are beyond our
Yeah.
understanding. Really, we can only
Yeah.
really guess at. It's quite amazing. It's such a
Yeah.
blessing to work with horses in any way. I can only imagine in this way what that would mean. What does a kind of normal work week look like? Is there a normal work week for these?
For a hippotherapy horse, they might only work 1 or 2 days in the week. For a horse that's working in equine therapy, they could be working 3-4 days a week more. Riding for the disabled can be working 2-3 days a week usually. If they're also doing another job though, and most of them are, they may be working 6 days a week. A normal day for us in the centre, and I don't know whether this is normal for other centres, So we would have a raft of children arriving at 10 o'clock for horse school, as it was called. So these are kids that, for one reason or another, needed some support in school. Often they were in children's homes, or they had autism, ADHD, other behavioural problems. And they would come with their own staff, and they would literally look after the horses. They'd arrive at 10. We'd have morning drinks and a bit of a chat, and they'd each be given a set of tasks to do by our teachers. So we had a qualified teacher that oversaw horse school, and off they'd go and start working with the animals. And then we would start to pick up on equine assisted therapy clients from then at around about 10:30. So we had another place where people were working with that. And my hippotherapy horses would usually do a session in the morning, and then a session in the afternoon if it wasn't too heavy a session in the morning. So a session was around about 20 minutes to half an hour of actual being ridden, but being prepared, walking in, warming up, doing the job, then being usually hit violently by a child that was really enthusiastic, not because they were cross, but because they wanted. If you have problems grading motion, how do you pat a pony? It's really hard, and it's fascinating to watch ponies that could be quite backward about people normally going, oh, okay, here, have my head again. Oh, okay, I know that you really love me. Oh, okay. So that carries its own tension. So there would be that. There would then be a break. So I would only let my horses work between 20 to 30 minutes twice a day for maximum 3 days in a week with riders. Now that's with hippotherapy clients. I know that some places work more than that and some places work less than that. That was what worked for us. And I would grade it. So if you'd had like a 2-year-old on your back in the morning, it would be okay to take a relatively slim adult on your back in the afternoon. If you'd got somebody who was very heavy and needed to be supported hugely, there would just be the 20-minute session in a day, and then out with whoever was left outside in the fields with your friends. But that isn't always the case. Sometimes, as I say, they're riding school ponies, so they'll then go on and take a riding lesson in the afternoon. So it depends how your centre runs, and it's so different from place to place. We used to do 2 with the horse school, so with the equine therapy clients, they did 2 rafts, one in the morning from 10 till about 11:30, 11:45, and then they would take their lunch and usually go. And then in the afternoon, we'd get about 1 o'clock, we'd get another raft of kids in, and the ponies would have to kind of start again. And if we'd got ponies that showed that they'd had enough in the morning, out they would go, and we would bring others in their place. But as I say, I had the good and bad fortune that we had a lot of rescue horses. And within the horse school, they would be doing things like feeding the horses, measuring out. Children that said they couldn't do maths would find themselves measuring out feed and taking away and subtracting and multiplying and dividing and all the things that they said they couldn't do, because they had to do it for their pony, and then it's worth doing, isn't it?
Oh, I love the idea of the horse school. That is so amazing. That's so exciting.
It was fun.
Okay. Ailsa, thank you so much. I have really loved chatting about this. Guys, if you're watching this as a recording, please share your comments and thoughts with us. We really want to connect with you guys. Let us know what you think. Ailsa, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Sorry it was a bit iffy at the beginning and more windy than it was earlier.
So we'll be online again next week, right? Chatting about, now I've forgotten. What are we chatting about?
The environment, how you create an environment.
Another topic I'm so excited about chatting about. So if you guys are keen, join us again next week at the same time, I think. I'll put it up in a little bit, and then you can add that to your calendars. And we'll see you guys next week. Thank you, Ailsa. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.